The passengers on Flight 217 were relaxed, unaware of how quickly calm skies could turn into chaos. The aircraft cruised at 35,000 feet, sunlight pouring through the windows in soft golden stripes. Children swapped snacks, earbuds hummed music, and the hum of the engines lulled the cabin into a sleepy peace. The seatbelt sign was off, and people moved about freely, stretching legs and chatting. A smiling flight attendant was handing out coffee when the entire plane suddenly jolted sideways like it had been struck by an invisible fist. Cups flew, hot liquid splattered on tray tables, and overhead bins rattled violently. A deep, grinding metal sound echoed beneath their feet, followed by tremors that vibrated through the seats. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed. The aircraft pitched downward, not a gentle descent, but a sickening drop that sent stomachs into throats. Oxygen masks snapped from the ceiling with mechanical precision, dangling like pale yellow jellyfish. The smell of burning circuitry filled the aisle, sharp and electric. For a moment, the passengers waited for a reassuring announcement, a calm confirmation that everything was fine, just turbulence, maybe. But the silence stretched too long. Then came the captain's voice. It crackled through the speakers, steady but heavy, each word carrying weight no one wanted to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a crash landing. The message was brief, clinical, and devastating. People reacted instantly. A mother wrapped her arms around her daughter, burying the child's face in her chest. A businessman in a suit fumbled with his seatbelt, fingers shaking so hard he could barely bally it. An elderly man clasped a rosary, whispering prayers under his breath. Flight attendants rushed down the aisle, shouting brace instructions, their own terror hidden beneath forced professionalism. In all the panic, seat 14C remained strangely still. The man seated there, tall, broad-shouldered, with sunburnt skin and work-roughened hands, closed his eyes for a moment. He inhaled slowly, as if preparing himself not just for survival, but for responsibility. He opened his eyes again, and in them was something the others lacked: clarity. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, steady despite the shaking floor. A flight attendant saw him and shouted, "Sir, sit down." But he did. He walked with purpose, one hand gripping seatbacks as the plane lurched. His boots thudded against the aisle carpet as he moved forward, passengers staring at him like he was mad. Yet something about his posture said otherwise. He was a man who had been inside emergencies before. Not in an airline cockpit perhaps, but somewhere equally unforgiving. He passed row after row of terrified faces, until the chief attendant met him near the front. "Sir, you cannot be up," she began, but he cut her off gently, voice calm and unshaken. "I need to reach the cockpit," he said. "I used to fly." And at that moment, as the plane trembled and alarms beeped in the background, hope shifted from fear to possibility. The chief attendant hesitated, confusion warring with protocol on her face. The plane rattled again, a sudden violent shiver that sent a nearby beverage cart rolling into a seat. She grabbed the armrest to steady herself. "You used to fly?" she asked, breathless. "What kind of aircraft?" The man in 14C, Tom, didn't flinch. "Single-engine agricultural planes," he replied. "Sprayers, rough landings, rougher weather. I know what to do when things break." The explanation was short, but there was something in his tone, an old familiarity with danger, that made her believe he wasn't simply panicking like everyone else. After a single sharp nod, she led him toward the cockpit. They squeezed through the galley door, past trembling crew members, who clung to the walls as the aircraft swayed. The cockpit door opened with a hiss, revealing chaos. Red warning lights pulsed across the instrument panel. Like angry stars, the first officer's hands danced over buttons, trying to silence alarms. Captain Russell gripped the control column with white knuckles, his jaw clenched in focused desperation. Sweat lined his brow, dripping down into the collar of his uniform. The plane pitched again, and the captain fought against it as if wrestling an invisible giant. He glanced at Tom, startled. "Who the hell is this?" The attendant answered quickly. "He says he can fly." Russell looked ready to argue, but the control column jerked toward him, and the aircraft rolled left. The horizon tipped dangerously. The captain's focus, snapped back to survival. "We lost hydraulic pressure," he barked. "Controls are fighting us. We're dropping altitude faster than we should." Tom stepped closer, eyes scanning the cockpit. He didn't recognize the digital readouts or colorful displays, but beneath all the technology he saw something familiar. Physics, airspeed, lift weight, drag. Those rules never changed. He pointed at the screen showing the wing diagram, where a flashing orange marker pulsed near the right aileron. "She's bleeding lift on the starboard wing," he said. "You're trying to muscle it. Stop fighting it and counter with trim." The first officer stared at him in disbelief. "How do you know that?" Tom's answer came like a shrug. "Because if I tried to force a damaged sprayer to stay level, I'd plow nose first into a soybean field." Captain Russell hesitated only a second before adjusting the trim. The plane steadied. Not perfectly, but the rolling eased. Tom reached for the second seat, pausing in respect. "Permission to sit." Russell met his eyes. There was no arrogance in Tom. No recklessness. Just a quiet certainty forged by years of keeping fragile machines alive above unforgiving ground. The captain nodded. Tom slid into the co-pilot's seat, his large hands wrapping around the trembling controls. He pressed gently, feeling the aircraft respond, like a panicked animal. "All right," he murmured, half to himself, half to the shaking metal giant around them. "Let's bring you home." Tom's palms tightened around the control column as the aircraft wavered in its descent, the wings twitching like they were caught in a crosswind. He could feel the plane straining, every bolt and rivet holding on for dear life. The cockpit was filled with warning tones that pulsed like a heartbeat. The first officer read numbers aloud. Altitude, fuel flow, rate of descent, each one sounding worse than the last. Captain Russell shifted focus from the struggling controls to the flight management displays. Desperate for a solution. "We have no runway nearby," he muttered. "Denver is too far. Nearest strip is 80 miles out." Tom listened, nodding once, but his mind was elsewhere. He didn't care about designated runways. Land was land, and any land wide enough could cradle a landing, if you respected it. "Where's the flattest ground below us?" he asked. The first officer blinked, stunned by the simplicity of the question. Russell zoomed the terrain radar. A wide patch of brown appeared to the southeast, undeveloped farmland. Tom's eyes narrowed. "That'll do." The captain shook his head. "We can't just land in a field. This isn't a crop duster. This is a passenger jet, with 200 souls on board." Tom didn't look away from the window. "And putting 200 souls in a fireball because you're too proud to touch dirt is worse." Silence fell for a breath. Outside the cockpit, the passengers sat in prayer, tears, and desperate hope. The captain swallowed and adjusted course, banking slightly toward the farmland. The jet groaned, shaking as if it disapproved. Tom guided the nose upward, by barely a finger's pressure, coaxing rather than forcing. The aircraft responded, stabilizing into a shallow glide. The first officer stared at him, amazed. "How are you doing that?" Tom allowed himself a tiny smile. "I don't fight the bird. You talk to her, same as a bulky tractor. You don't yank the wheel. You let it tell you what it can handle." He studied the wind indicators, then the flickering hydraulic pressure gauges. The right side was almost useless. They'd only get one attempt at landing. Through the windshield, the patch of earth grew larger, rolling toward them, like a dusty ocean. Tom imagined corn stalks, rough soil, irrigation lines, every hazard a potential killer. He'd landed planes in worse, though never this large, never with so many lives at stake. His breath steadied. They had to keep the descent shallow, bleed speed without stalling, touch down soft enough to avoid snapping a wing. It wasn't impossible, just unforgiving. A tremor rippled through the fuselage. Passengers screamed. The left engine coughed. A violent metallic growl. Warning lights erupted red. Russell cursed. Tom leaned into the controls, adjusting pitch, easing throttle. "She's scared," he murmured, "but she'll hold as long as we do." The farmland rushed up to meet them, the last lifeline stretching under the dying sky. Tom tightened his grip. There was no turning back. The wheels slammed into the soil with a brutal jolt, bouncing the jet like a tossed pebble. Every passenger lurched forward in their seats, screams filling the cabin. The farmland below wasn't smooth like a runway. It was uneven, scarred with irrigation trenches and broken stalks. Dust exploded across the windshield, blinding the cockpit. Tom felt the aircraft buck beneath him, trying to wrench free of control. He kept one hand steady on the column, the other guiding the throttle. Too much brake and the nose would dig in. Too little and they would tear across the field until the wings snapped. "Easy," he muttered, as if speaking to a skittish animal. "You're almost home." The left engine coughed violently, then died, spitting sparks into the dirt behind them. The fuselage skidded sideways, tires struggling to grip land, never meant for them. Captain Russell reached instinctively for the controls, panic flaring, but Tom snapped. "Don't fight her." He adjusted the rudder pedals, countering the drift, dragging the aircraft back into alignment. The field blurred past. Brown earth, shredded crops, scattered irrigation pipes. Another bounce sent overhead bins rattling, scattering bags and coats like debris in a storm. Every second stretched painfully long. The roar of the failed engine faded, replaced by the grinding scrape of metal and the desperate squeal of rubber against earth. Tom eased the nose up a fraction more. Bleeding speed. He felt the landing gear tremble dangerously. But the momentum was finally dying. A final violent shudder rippled through the plane. Then the world stopped moving. Dust settled around them, in a quiet haze. For a moment, the cabin was frozen. No motion, no sound, no certainty that they had survived. Then someone sobbed. Another laughed hysterically. A child wailed somewhere near the middle rows, followed by the relieved cry of a mother. The flight attendants sprang into action, their training returning in waves. "Stay seated, stay seated," they called, voices shaking, but determined. Captain Russell unbuckled slowly, like a man waking from a nightmare. His hands trembled as he turned to Tom. The farmer sat still, breathing hard, staring straight ahead, as though unsure the ordeal was truly over. Russell swallowed, eyes wide. "How did you?" His voice faltered. "Who are you?" Tom finally leaned back, exhaustion pouring from every muscle. He wiped the dust from his palms, his voice low and simple. "Name's Tom Mercer. I fly crop dusters. When you've got a barn full of bills and a storm rolling in, you learn to land broken planes in worse fields than this." He stood up, knees stiff from bracing against the controls, and looked toward the rattled cabin. People stared at him like he'd walked out of a legend. He gave a small nod, no heroism in his face, just relief. "Let's get everyone out," he said. "They've had enough flying for one day."